Hello, I'm Latasha Marble, and I will be discussing problem solving in the workplace. Working for TSA, I have learned how to use my critical thinking skills as I am assessed on this assessment every 6 months by my current supervisor. And in this section, I am required to take a problem and find the best solution to ensure that screening has been done properly and that we did not skip anything or cut corners to screen the passengers and their baggage coming through the checkpoint. Being in a leadership role, I am also required to assist my officers when a problem arises on the checkpoint. We encounter problems every day. I wish there was a way that I could say that we have a smooth day with nothing going wrong, but unfortunately, that's never the case. It may be small problems, fairly large problems, but we handle ourselves professionally, and I always encourage my officers to reach out to a fellow member of leadership to help de-escalate problems when they become very intense. One problem that we run into often would be passengers bringing in duty-free alcohol or other large liquids through the checkpoint. As some of you may know, 3.4 ounces or smaller is a required amount, an allowed amount that TSA will allow passengers to come through the checkpoint with. And it must be contained in a quart-sized bag. However, sometimes we run into the issue with passengers bringing home-sized products that consist of more than the 3.4 ounces, and sometimes the quantity over the quart-sized bag. So this issue is probably one of the biggest issues that we have, because there are a lot of people that feel that this rule is unnecessary and that we are picking on them when we tell them that they can go back out front to check the bag in or discard the items there on the checkpoint, maybe even taking it back to their car if they drove for the day. We have various techniques and ways that we can try to help the passengers, but sometimes that's not enough. One problem that I know I did well with was a passenger coming through with several bottles of alcohol. Unfortunately, she did not purchase them from the duty-free shops in different areas or different airports. So she noticed a couple on the side of her that had alcohol, and they were allowed to go. The issue started with one of my officers, and the officer explained to the passenger that the liquids could not go through the checkpoint, but she would be more than happy to escort them out to go check it in with the airline. The passenger didn't like this idea at all, and she said that she's come through before with this alcohol, so she wasn't sure why she couldn't come through with it today. When I came into the situation, I used some of the techniques that Michael Callip produced in the book, The Think Smarter, of clarity. I needed to gain clarity on the situation, so I talked to my officer to see what the issue was, so that way we can help the passenger. Once I found out that she was upset with the policy, I explained to her why the liquids weren't able to go and what we could do to assist her in making her flight on time and to check the items in with the airline. She was not happy with this solution, and she wanted to speak to someone over me. At the time, I was the top officer on the checkpoint, and the manager was already engaged in something else. So I had to use my critical thinking skills to help de-escalate the problem and to find a solution for her. Once I decided to gather some conclusions as far as giving her the advice of what she can do to keep her liquids or, discard of them on the checkpoint, she noticed that there was a couple next to her that had alcohol, and she watched the process and wanted to know why they were able to take their liquids and she wasn't. So I explained to her that TSA allows passengers to come through with an approved TSA duty-free liquid bag, and it has to follow certain rules and stipulations in order to proceed with the process. She didn't understand that at first, but once I showed her that she didn't have the bag, she didn't have the other requirements, she slowly started to understand why she couldn't bring them. And this is when we came up with the decision to have her go back out to the ticket counter and check the bag in to go under the plane. Using this critical thinking skill, I have to be on top of things and I have to think quickly. I can't wait to find other answers or other results, because sometimes we may have other passengers behind and waiting to get some assistance. So I had to take this passenger and move her to an area that we weren't using at that time on the checkpoint, so that way the checkpoint could continue to run without stopping everything else, because she wanted to know why she couldn't take her liquids. I pride myself in knowing how to use my critical thinking skills, because working for TSA, sometimes it can get a little rough and a little scary. The other day I had an image that would have scared anyone, but using my critical thinking skills, I solved the problem by calling the next chain of command. The supervisors on the checkpoint were engaged in something else, so the only thing that I could do was call for my manager. And calling for my manager, I also reached out to my network for the explosive team to come down that we have there at each airport to assist in the situation, to ensure that what we had wasn't anything dangerous and that could harm, my checkpoint or other passengers. Once we de-escalated the situation and controlled and found that the items were something of everyday common items, it made my job easier. And I was commended for doing a good job and taking the steps to engage in my network, calling for the explosive teams, as well as calling my manager to come down to take a look at the image with myself and the officers. When you find yourself stuck in a situation, one thing that I know helps, and I always tell my officers, is to disengage. Disengage from the situation to calm down, because once you get excited or get upset, it kind of makes the situation harder to resolve. So if you find yourself getting upset and tense, count to 10 and step back. Call for someone else to come in and help, and that way you can resolve the problem a lot less stressfully than trying to handle the situation when you're at your peak of being upset. I hope this was a very helpful tip, and that you can use this tip in your everyday problem solving skills.